Mostly agree with you, Cartoon.
It's important, but.
It's your favorite part of the night, I know.
All right. In the interest of keeping the pace going here, are we good, Brad?
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and call our continuation of our work session into order here. For those of you just tuning in, our work session had 3 items on it. This is the 3rd item, solid waste report, that we're gonna cover right now. And we have Chris Bell, who helps us analyze all of our garbage rates and helps us make recommendations. And let's see, who's doing this? Craig, are you kicking this off?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
So I wasn't here in July when you guys had a meeting. Kristen said you wanted to come back to this topic, so we invited Chris tonight as well as Pride. Kristen and Eric are here for any questions. It was more of questions, and I believe we were missing a couple counselors, so.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. I should have mentioned that. Yes, so I was in the last meeting and we were down 2 counselors. And this time around, we had some important decisions around the rates and what services we offer and what that looks like. And we want to make sure we had all of you here for that. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. It is with you. Are you good, Chris or Kristen? Kristen, Chris?
So Chris, I have the presentation that we did back in July back up. There's really no new information. It was sent out to everybody. Let me get it to move forward, Brad.
Keith, right, left, Keith.
Yeah. Oh, geez. There we go. Okay. So, Chris, do you want to go through any of this?
Yeah, we will, the first slide is just for if anybody else outside of the immediate people in the room and myself are there. This is the ordinance that stipulates the process that the city undertakes every year when reviewing the collection rates. And the city, if it falls within a specific rate range, or excuse me, rate of return, then the city applies the CPI and moves on. However, over the last, I want to say 6 years, with the increased costs associated with disposal, which is regulated by Metro, that rate range has kind of been out of whack. And so the city has asked me to review these on a regular basis. And so this slide pretty much explains what the process is. So if you want to go to the next slide, and this is the adjusted results from 2024, and the results came in under 5%. And so as part of that process, it triggers a rate review where we look at the rates, recalibrate the rates for the upcoming year. Next slide. The current rates went into effect on January 1st of 2025, and there was a 10% increase for the 35-gallon cart, as well as an 11% increase for commercial collection. And the biggest component of this increase was the cost of disposal. And if you recall, the increase at Metro was approximately 16%, which I believe went from about $130 to $152 per ton. Next slide, please. And so when I take the 2024 costs after we do the adjustments, I escalate those for the current year. And in this case, like I said earlier, the Metro tipping fee went from approximately 135 to 153.67. And this year, it went from 153 to 164, about a 5.5% increase. Drivers' wages increased by 3%, and that's due to the regular union increases that are stipulated in the contract between Pride and the Teamsters. And what's interesting again this year is the 2024 and the previous 6 years, there was a tax credit, a fuel tax credit for alternative fuels for compressed natural gas that sunset on December 31st. The impact on that, specifically for Pride, was an increase of 75% on the cost of fuel. And you may look at that and say, well, that's a crazy high amount. However, if you look at the cost of compressed natural gas fuel compared to diesel, it's still really, really inexpensive compared to diesel. So it's still, even though it went up 75%, it's still a great deal for the ratepayer. Organic waste increased by 2.3%, and that's just due to CPI adjustments. This year, with the implementation of the RMA, the hauler is, in this case, Pride is going to get rebated $77 per ton starting in July. And we recognize that in the rates. Administrative costs increased by approximately 3%. And then truck depreciation increased by 13.5%. And that was due to two things. Primarily the delivery of a couple of collection trucks. And we've talked about this before. You know, since 2020, the COVID, it's kind of backed up the truck production, and it takes a longer time, and the lead time between when you order a truck and when you get it seems to still be a mystery. Although from my understanding, it is getting better. However, this year Pride did receive 2 automated collection trucks, and then or 2 automated collection trucks, and then a front load collection truck in October 2024. And so when you take those into consideration, there's going to be an increase there. So there's that. Next slide, please. And this is something that we've been talking about, and this is the Metro tipping fee. And you can see the progression of the rate since 2017 went from, you know, just under $100 to $161 and 25. So over that period of time, the increased cost of disposal in Sherwood, as well as everywhere else in the Portland metropolitan area, is increased by about 71%. And that's a significant amount considering that CPI over that same period of time is about 35%. The mayor wanted this detail, so we got this breakout. And this is the overall cost per ton for Metro to handle the garbage, and why this impacts Sherwood, even though garbage is not delivered to a Metro transfer station. In Sherwood, the incentive for Pride to keep as many tons as they possibly can get, and when you own a transfer station, you want as many tons going through that facility as you possibly can. So Metro does control the flow of tons through their facility, and any reduction in tons is an increase in cost. It's just it's a fixed cost divided by a variable cost. So in this case, the incentive for Pride disposal, or in this case, Pride recycling, which is the transfer station, is to match Metro's rate. And so when you're comparing Pride's cost per ton versus Metro's cost per ton, this is Metro's cost per ton, and you can see there's a lot of other things that are in there that, you know, are kind of questionable, and I'll kind of leave it at that. Next slide, please.
So Chris, can I ask a question on that?
Yeah, go back. Let's go back to that one because that's a really good slide.
Yeah, so because the other thing that factors is years and years ago when Metro, I think, built the South transfer station, they issued GO bonds, and to guarantee the payment on that, they, through ordinance, required that a certain amount of tonnage always goes through their facilities. So the public or the private haulers get what's left, right? Has there been any talk of changing those percentages?
God, I would, you know, it's interesting. Metro did a lot of work, a lot of good work, and all the people did all the good work either retired or were fired. But they did work back in between 2008 and 2012, where they mapped the flow of waste to the different facilities, and they had a policy at the time that the tonnage should flow to the clearest facilities to reduce the vehicle miles traveled. And that's kind of just been forgotten because to your point, Mayor, you know, when you're pushing 40% of the tons to 2 facilities, and you've got all of these other facilities that are you know, have been established to take the same material mix, same wet waste material mix, and you're utilizing a facility that requires the trucks to drive into traffic and expend a lot more time in traffic as opposed to going to the nearest facility and dumping. Not only is expensive because, again, we set rates based on the amount of time that truck is out there driving around picking up garbage and driving to the transfer station, but it also keeps the costs associated with those facilities high. So back to what I was saying before, if Pride could get more tons through their facility, their unit cost, their cost per ton would decrease, as well as a lot of the other facilities around there. And they're all competing for tons. But again, Metro dictates where those tons are going to go. And so 40% goes to Metro at the 2 transfer stations. The other 60%, I think there's, off the top of my head, I think there's 7 facilities that are 7 other facilities that are licensed or permitted by Metro in the metropolitan area. So yes, those bonds have been gone a long time. I think we're in year 10 of those bonds being gone. And Metro, when they did their planning a couple of years ago, they had a paragraph, and I think I addressed this last year when I was a similar issue. Metro didn't fully understand, the people at Metro nor the consultants, that if you close down those facilities, those 2 facilities, and you let the tons flow, that they are going to be in a significant revenue deficit, because they live on the tons from the haulers, because the cost of handling a ton of garbage from a hauler that goes straight into the pit and is compacted is significantly less than the cost of handling a self-haul. And Metro, by default, and they've kind of placed this out, they're kind of the default facility for self-haulers. So all of those tons that would normally, all those tons from self-haulers primarily go to South or Central. Some will leak outside the area. There for a while, Newburgh was getting a lot of tons from self-haulers. But for the most part, Metro has established itself as handling those self-haul tons. And those self-haul tons should be priced accordingly, because if they did, you're looking at about, maybe $200 a ton. And if you did that, a lot of people wouldn't utilize those facilities. So they're still trying to figure out what they're going to be with their long-term facility plan. The finances and the numbers behind it don't make any sense. There's no logic to them whatsoever.
Well,
So
it makes no sense when you can go to Newburgh and dump a truck for $25, and if you go to Metro, it's $100.
correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
Actual issues. Yeah.
So
This funds the Metro government
yes,
machine.
that's the problem.
that's part of it. Yeah, part of it. Because if you look at the intercompany, like if you look at the $9.82 that they consider part of their system fee, that's a lot of money for administrative costs. Whereas 10 years ago they didn't have this. They weren't reporting this kind of costs associated with running the facility, and they were a lot more active. They even had a couple engineers working on staff. Now they're the only facility around here that doesn't have an engineer on staff, and they got 2 transfer stations. They got a landfill. So you got to start questioning there, who's doing what and where the costs are flowing.
Well, thank you for that, because it's important that the public understands kind of what the drivers for these increases are. You made the comment about everyone's competing for tons. I just want to amend that Metro doesn't compete.
No.
They have their guaranteed 40% through fiat, through ordinance, and then the rest of the haulers compete for those tons. So
there is some competition for C&D. There is some, because Metro wants the wet waste. They do take C&D, but there is some competition for those tons.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate you adding this slide.
So this is the 2025 at $162 per ton. The cost to the resident in the city of Sherwood for that disposal cost, just for that disposal of the garbage, is $9.91 per month. And for a commercial customer with a 4-yard container, it's $45.43 just to dispose of the garbage in that container. That's not counting the collection or the recycling or the administrative costs associated with that. That's just for the disposal. So the projected results, once we put all of the once we take in consideration the rate increase that was in effect on January 1st and the costs that I laid out earlier, the projected rate of return is coming in at 9.1% for 2025. And so, you know, the rate adjustment that we proposed last year looks like it's gonna do what it's supposed to do. You know, it's get within the range. It's not, you know, we're a little bit, we got some costs that we didn't anticipate, that being the CNG tax credit, which I think if we would have done it, we would have came in probably about, you know, around 10%. Next slide, please. So when we set rates for 2026, we have to escalate them because we have to look at, we're planning ahead. So there's going to be a rate adjustment for 2026 because we got to meet the revenue with the expenses that are going to be incurred in the upcoming year. And so based on those increases that we earlier, there's going to be a labor increase, and that's with the union contract. There's going to be an increase in truck costs associated with some new trucks that Pride has got. Their increase in disposal costs that we set for Metro, and again, those costs are going to be incurred in 2026. And so we're looking at a total increase for the 35-gallon cart, which is the most popular within the city of Sherwood, of $1.51, which is 4% to go into place on January 1st, 2026, excuse me. And same thing with commercial. The commercial looks like it's going to be pretty healthy, but we still want to pass through that additional increase in disposal cost. And so the current rate is listed right there. The disposal increase is primarily calculated on a per yard basis. And so for commercial customers, they're going to see an increase between 2.1 and 2.5% for the most popular service within the city of Sherwood. And pros drop box fees are primarily to make up for that reduction or that increased cost of fuel and the labor costs associated with the union contract. And so we're looking at an increase of 4.5% to 5%, depending on the type of service. And then medical waste collection rates are going to be increasing. And primarily, the big increase in this area is with the shutdown of Covanta. Both companies, Stericycle and Trilogy, were utilizing Covanta for incineration of medical waste. Now they're both those companies, and in this case, it's Trilogy is hauling to, I believe, Idaho to do some disposing of the materials. However, I did see last week that they are doing a permit review on the autoclave that Trilogy is building in Clackamas County. And so hopefully that'll get approved. And once that does, waste will be disposed of through an autoclave at Trilogy in their Clackamas location. However, that cost is still going to be higher than what it was using Covanta. And so these are the proposed rates to put in place for the increased cost of disposal that's going to be incurred by Trilogy.
So that'll be a Metro operated?
No, medical waste, interestingly enough, is the waste itself is not, Metro doesn't even touch medical waste, which maybe
I apologize, I misunderstood you. I thought you said that Metro was building it, so.
No, Trilogy is building it. It's built in Clackamas. It's off in Clackamas, I forget was it Highway 213, right off 205.
Okay.
Is that August of 25 or 26?
It should be, it was supposed to be operational in 2025. They had some issues. You guys are gonna like this. The building that's gonna house the autoclave also houses in this huge warehouse, also houses a company that makes food. And so they're going through that. So there's a little bit of the processing, the permitting took a little bit longer than I think a lot of people anticipated to clear those hurdles.
Yeah, they're currently in their 30-day comment period to get their DEQ permit. So assuming that goes smoothly, it should be within the next 30 days.
Okay.
So next slide, please.
The slide.
We've removed over slides.
She's saying that's it, but.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I thought we had one other thing where we were talking about potentially reducing a service, like taking out organic waste from yard waste or something and maybe it would lessen.
That was talked about last time and we showed what the impact would be. And then the feedback we got in general is that it did seem like it was worth it. One was to either reduce the frequency of collection was one way that you could save money. And then the other thing that we talked about is the commingling of materials in yard debris. So
I know, I think that, yeah, I think that the collection one was a no-go, but I thought the other one where we said, do we have any data on how many people are actually commingling? And the answer was, we don't think a lot of people are. And so we thought, well, if we remove that, will anybody notice? And it'll keep the rates low.
How much would it lower the rates?
So you have the other slide.
$1.44.
$1.44, yeah, so I mean, it wasn't,
That's fairly significant.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't making it even, but it felt like if nobody's using it, let's,
I use it.
if nobody except Dan's using it.
It's been amazing.
Yeah, no, I know, and I get it, I hate taking away something, but it's also a way to say, hey, we're trying to keep your rates low. You know, we can't have
I
everything.
think for the, not knowing how many people use it, but let's say 30% use it,
I think it
cause
was way high,
I don't
cause
know,
I think,
Dan uses it.
I know,
My mother uses it.
but that's only,
If that many people used it for $1.44.
that's a 20th of the people.
$1.44 for everybody though.
Yeah, and so that,
They're not.
so do we have any idea how many I mean, how do we know?
So overall, it's very difficult to determine how many individual customers are using it because in the mix of the material, it is a small percentage.
Yeah,
I think the difficulty is that once you add something like that to a program, it is near impossible to get it out. And the reason why it's more expensive for that service is because it goes to a different facility that has different permitting requirements. There's a different DEQ permit if you're composting just yard debris versus yard debris and food scraps combined. They're different feedstocks classifications, so it's different permitting requirements and different processing requirements. So all of that to say, we used to take the material to another facility that had cheaper processing, and we now take it to a new facility that has more expensive processing, and that cost has gone up pretty significantly since the program started. So that is kind of what keeps putting upward pressure related to that program in the region. It would be very difficult, if not impossible, to get that material out, which means if we tried to then send that material to our old facility that we used to send it to that still does just yard debris processing, it's possible that those loads would get rejected if there was too much food in them, or that they would stop taking our material and we would end up kind of back in the same boat, even though we're not technically taking food in the yard debris. It's kind of one of those, it's difficult to put something back in the box once you've opened it up, so that would be part of my concern of removing that from the program now. In addition to, with the standards in the region, there is currently requirements for businesses to compost their food scraps. And that requirement is there because you have more volume, it has more of an environmental impact to get that material out of the landfill. But most of the region does have food in their yard debris. And before we provided that service, it was one of the most common requests we got from our customers across the board of why can't I put food in my yard debris? I'm from Portland, or I moved from Beaverton and I could do it there, why can't I do it here? It was a very requested service. I don't have data to support how many people are participating, but I do have information that would say that that you do utilize the service and do like the service.
One of the things that we talked about in the last meeting, and some of you weren't here for it, was we could do this well, first I want to make a comment on that piece, because a lot of the stuff I read on why they justified that, they looked at the impact of food debris in the dumps and the methane that it creates. What they haven't done is gone back to see how much they've actually diverted, which our suspicion is it's a very small number. So is this program actually creating regionally the value that we think it's creating? And I think Metro and other agencies should be taking a look at that, because there is, to your point, there's a significant cost to do those things together. But one of the things we talked about in the last meeting was, do we have an A/B option that we approve, and then we do some polling with our community before we hit January 1 to find out how many people are using it? Because if it's like 1%, the problem you're talking about probably becomes a non-issue, right? If it's 30, 40%, then yeah, that's a huge problem. but we get some information from the community on actually who's using it and how much. Or at least who's using it. I probably can't get how much, but that was one of the things we talked about.
You mean before rates would increase January first?
Right, so we,
Which means we have to have the information before December first, because
Right.
notices have to go out 30 days in advance and.
yeah, so we'd have to do some polling with our community, but personally, I'm just one vote, but I think it's worth it to ask the question and ask our community, is this something really you want?
Yeah, I think it's worth it because if it is, again, I know the number is somewhere between 1% and 100%. If it's at the 1% range, is it more important than paying more money for the police? Is it more important than paying more money for library? You know what I mean? Like, we're asking people to spend their money on stuff, and yes, we want everything, and I wanna have the recycling and stuff, but at some point, if nobody's using it, we just gotta go, all right, well, we're not ready for it yet.
I mean, my suspicion has always been the people that, and Dan, you can confirm this is true or not for you, people that either were doing that before our program started or would be doing it now, were probably doing it in some other method anyway, right? They were collecting their own scraps and composting them themselves or whatever. And so for me, that would be an easy decision to like go back to take that out and go back. But obviously now hearing your explanation of why that's complicated adds a whole nother factor that I hadn't considered before. I suspect the number's not that large, but I also suspect that the people that do it would find another way if the program went away.
I apologize, Mayor. What's the monthly cost increase to the residential customer for this?
It's like $1.44.
$1.44.
More per month for this versus.
More, I mean, we've already been paying it.
No, but if you took it away, it would save.
It would save, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a substantial.
I mean, that cuts that down to pennies versus $1.50 and $1, you know what I mean? Like it's at least, I'm with the mayor on this, it's at least asking the question is worth it, and if it comes back even 30% are using it, I'd be like, all right, well, it's probably worth, and I know there's difficulty in taking it away, but if a program's not working, we either have to make it work or we've got to stop using, stop doing it, right?
When we put out surveys, what kind of feedback or what kind of percentage are we getting back in responses?
How do we reach every customer?
We need a representative sample. We need every customer.
I know that if you can get there's, in terms of your percent confidence in the number of surveyed, yeah. Just based on past history, if you get 600 to 700 respondents that are well distributed, that can get you within a 5% confidence.
I'd be in favor of asking the question, whether or not we can do it in time for 2026 rates. Maybe we can do it in time for.
Right, we'd have the information,
2027,
yeah.
right? So good information to get for going forward.
Now, one risk, and Keith, I think you brought this up, Metro could get mad at us and just require us all to do it. If we try to pull it, that's a risk that we would have to take. However, if that happened, it would drive a good regional conversation about this program actually being used, which I think needs to happen because it's a significant cost to our ratepayers for this, but.
Well, if I could speak to that just briefly, so Metro does have regional service standards that guide local governments to have the kind of standardized services across the region. Currently, that regional service standard talks about frequency of service, whether you have food in the yard debris or just yard debris only, but it does not require local governments to have programs that have food in the yard debris. So they do kind of have a model that allows for both programs currently. And they're reviewing those service standards right now to make some changes to some things, but that's not one of the things that's on the table. So it would be likely sometime they would do that.
So we have the options.
But like I said, most local governments in the area have opted to provide that service on their own. And so I think that's part of why they haven't tried to force local governments to do it. Yeah. But that's just my take on that.
The hot button for me of the thing this evening is just the natural gas versus electric trucks.
Before we move on to that, is there consensus to ask the question of our community? And then if we can't get it in time, have an EV approach, or maybe it's for next cycle.
Yeah, that's good.
Say that again,
So,
please.
so we would ask our community and not just a poll that's, you know, kicked around. We could do it scientifically.
I'd be surprised if we can do it, get it done this year.
Right, and if we can, we can, but my point is, we'd have that data for the next cycle. At a minimum, if we can get it done, we could have an A/B scenario going into the January 1st, right? And I think we would have to work with our partner over at Pride, you know, because it's probably not 1%, it's probably not 30%, you know, and where do we run the risk of actually increasing our costs because of low rejections and stuff like that? So it's a lot, to your point, it's a lot to get done before the end of the year.
Cause I think this needs to come forward to council for approval probably at least by mid-November at the
Mid-November,
latest.
yeah.
So that Pride has enough time to get their notices.
So we
I
don't
just think
have
we need to
enough
punt
time.
on it for this year and worry about getting the data the right way
Yeah.
for next year's conversation.
Can we
Yeah.
use our new website to get this info? I mean, he's nodding, so.
Well, to do a scientific poll, you gotta talk about that, because you gotta look at your demographic spread on your responses and all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in favor of the poll, the survey, but I don't think we have enough time to get it done and to be fair to our partners
Yeah,
And
okay,
staff.
and staff.
okay, fair enough, so.
Before we move,
Yeah.
the facility that you bring the RW to now, the end product is compost, I imagine. Is there a way to bring that back to Sherwood to then potentially resell to the residents?
So they do sell it currently. Do they sell it out of their site in North Plains or somewhere else? I'm not exactly sure. I know that there's also a statewide conversation going on about this because there was legislation that was attempted last year to require the commercial food scraps to be done statewide, not just in the metro region. And I'm serving on a work group that just met yesterday on this. And part of that bill also is about procurement policies across the state to make sure that like governments and school districts and things like that are kind of required to buy the compost that is made from these programs. So I know there's some work trying to be done around that, but I honestly don't know where that product that they make would be, how like a Sherwood resident would be able to get access to buy that or to use it, but I can certainly find that out.
Great, okay.
And I was just gonna ask on the survey piece if we could just work together with staff to kind of craft what have those questions over to make sure it makes sense.
What needs to be in the context of
absolutely,
yeah.
how they see their bills and
Yeah.
all that, absolutely, yeah. All right, so next item, Councilor Mays on the.
CNG versus electric.
Yes.
I'm in favor of the compressed natural gas. The trucks are half the price of the all electric, and compressed natural gas fuel costs are still incredibly low. So there's a definite impact to the ratepayer, if we were implementing.
Chris, what was the impact on the electric rates?
Let's see here, the impact was,
Yeah.
It was in the previous one.
Yeah.
let's see here, I think,
Chris, I'm pulling up the other presentation.
okay, wonderful.
Or Brad is.
I'm looking at it.
I have a question about this as well.
Is this the old one?
Not yet.
Okay. It's slide 14.
July, the second one.
While we're getting this up, do you know what the makeup of the fleet is right now as far as CNG and electric?
So we have 47 drivers, so that's what we so those are taking out on the road each day. Of those 47, about 40 of them are CNG, about
Right there.
that's what we can stairs. I would say maybe 30 are CNG, 5 to 6 are diesel. and 2 are electric.
Are the diesel the oldest ones?
Most of them, yes. Due to 2020 and supply chain issues, we did have to buy some used diesel trucks because we were waiting on some new orders that were quite delayed. So we have 4 2020 diesels that are in the rest of older trucks that will be down the road in the next few years.
Is there any application that requires a diesel, or you can get rid of all the diesels once they phase out, hit their lifespan, or?
I think at this point, we use CNG in each truck type application, so it's just a matter of, we do a few trucks each year on a normal replacement schedule and the timing of those.
Wouldn't plan to buy any more diesels and.
That's not in our current
Okay.
plan. Unless there's significant supply chain issue.
In your current plan, what is the makeup of the future fleet then? Is your ideal?
So, this year that we're talking about, we purchased 2 EVs and 3 CNG vehicles. We generally buy 4 to 5 trucks a year, depending on the application and price points. The following year, so going into 2026, we have on order 1 electric vehicle and 4 CNG.
And you foresee that same proportion forward?
We would not increase our EV application at the current price point, so we're trying to balance the benefits of the electric vehicles from a climate perspective with the additional cost. So that we're trying to find that right balance, go after grant funding when available. And then we did find out just yesterday, I got a call from the dealer for the electric trucks that they have dropped the price pretty significantly on the electric trucks. I'm still not down to the CNG price, but by $178,000.
Oh.
And that will take effect for the truck we have on order for 2026. So they said we'll see that reflected in it.
So,
Go ahead, Tim.
I was gonna say, I think Mike, I was talking with folks kind of about the history of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, when years and years and years ago, when you went to CNG, there was a conversation that happened with the cities about it because it was more money, and the contract that we have with you is, we make sure you hit a certain margin. So, so when you have high capital costs, which, today we don't have to say, but that impacts those rates. So I think going forward, we'd like to have that dialogue, because it does impact our customers. I mean, what was it, 1.1 million versus, I think you told us around 500,000. Yeah, for a CNG truck. So I just, going forward, having those conversations, just to make sure we're all on board with that, it's because, and Taylor mentioned this, I mean, we've got 2 levies that are gonna increase rates, PGE's been increasing rates, Northwest Natural Gas, everyone is increasing rates right now, so I think we have to be really, really careful about that with our customers.
I had a question. Oh, sorry, Doug, you go ahead. You were waiting.
When I look at this chart, assuming it's accurate, I have no reason to believe it's not, so we're seeing $600,000 more for the cost, and then another $87,000 a year additional annual cost. I mean, that's like 1.2 million over the course of the 7 years difference.
So
Is that correct?
Cost is the depreciation, so it's the cost of the truck.
Okay.
For the life.
So so it's 600,000 and then another 1,000 a month operating costs, so over the course of
CNGs are now 580
Yeah, that 495.
and that 1.1 has now dropped to 178.
not on the ones we already bought.
Not on the 2 that.
Okay, so we're looking at plus the annual additional, okay, so over $600,000 a year difference over a 7-year span. Why? Why would, like, from a business standpoint, that makes absolutely no sense to me.
Well, can you tell me, I don't know, maybe Dan probably knows better than me. Climate wise, electric versus CNG and CNG is friendlier than diesel.
Significantly.
So what's the difference between CNG and electric? How does that impact on climate?
Well, first of all, is climate the reason why you're willing to spend $600,000 more? Is there any other reason or benefit?
So, many of the communities that we service have climate action plans that are trying to reduce emissions in their neighborhoods and in their airspaces.
We don't.
But it's in our goals this year to get one.
Well, we don't know what that'll be in the plan.
Possible.
It's like an 80% reduction in particulates. I'm probably not getting the terminology exactly right there. But an electric vehicle would have 0 emissions, so it's a 100%.
Except where the electricity is generated.
And as an owner of 2 electric cars and previous owner of many, there's some use cases that I think are a bad use case for electric vehicles. And so I'm, I as well am like, well.
I still haven't got my question answered. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I'm just saying.
I think you're asking the same question.
But the compressed natural gas, I'd rather have an 80% reduction and have it be
And save
cheaper.
600.
Yeah.
So why?
But I don't know,
It is for climate reasons.
in communities, yeah, they can't switch trucks when they leave Sherwood, right?
And did your other cities tell you that they supported an increase in costs to their ratepayers for climate action?
This is the last community we've come to for a rate increase, and all of our previous rate increases for this year were approved.
That wasn't really my question.
Well, I'm not every community has the same methodology for setting rates. Not every community has climate action plan, to your point, but this question has come up in multiple communities during our big review.
Look, can I ask another way? If I went to Frank or Maureen now in Tiger and said, were the electric trucks worth 42 cents a month? Did they look at it in those terms, I guess is my question.
Are we the nosiest ones?
No. And Chris is the rate consultant both in Tigard, Hillsborough, and Beaverton, so has been involved in these conversations. So, if you would like his perspective on those conversations, he can chime in too. In Tigard, I would say they were the community that had the most direct conversation about the electric vehicles in the council meeting. And those comments were generally that they were supportive of our move to electric. They also voiced that they did not like the price. That perhaps we should have waited to see if we received the PGE grant that we applied for that we ultimately did not get before we placed the order. Some of that is a timing issue, as Chris spoke to, with when we have to order trucks and when we get delivery of things and when the grants needed to be applied for. But we have had an internal conversation about perhaps the 3rd truck is on order, but perhaps before we go down this path again, that we maybe delay ordering electric trucks for what would be 2027, apply for the grant that would then inform whether or not we received the grant to help bring that cost down before we place the order. So we would skip a year. And also, as I found out yesterday, the very good news, the price has come down. Hopefully, as the technology evolves, the manufacturing efficiencies are gained, the technology changes a little bit more, that price gap will continue to shrink.
Are you on kind of the leading edge of electric truck purchases in the region or nationally?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that probably would have been if I was asked, in the fact that we're seeing both the CNG price go up and the electric price go down. If we would have waited, you would have waited maybe a couple of years, where now instead of 42 cents, maybe it's 20 cents. And then maybe we're all like, yeah, I like that. That makes sense, because now we are getting that extra emissions reduction, but at a much, more palatable cost, but hindsight.
And we are continuing to apply for all available grant funding to try and bring the cost of those vehicles down. Not for these trucks, but we did receive DEQ grant funding for this last year of CNG trucks that we purchased, so it will bring those costs down, and we're finally delayed on that. Money is finally starting to flow in for those trucks as well. So I do just want to reiterate for the council that I recognize these trucks are expensive, but we are trying to do right by our community partners and doing everything we can to keep those costs low, because on a truck purchase, if we receive grant funding that is a direct benefit to the ratepayer, it's not a direct benefit to me. So I just want to be clear about that. Put those efforts in to try and bring the costs down, and try and be good partners in that way.
Well, Pride's always been a good partner. I know we put you through hard,
These are all fair questions.
it's just for when we get asked,
I was trying to imagine the executive at Waste Management buying an electric truck.
So Republic is actually the large company that has bought a significant amount of these trucks across the nation. But they have one running in Tualatin. They have a second one that I believe they're planning on deploying in Wilsonville that hasn't quite hit the road yet, and I think they have one in Salem. But Republic did significant amount of R&D with the manufacturer and kind of got first dibs on. I think they bought 100 of them nationwide.
They have most of Portland.
Portland has about 10 haulers left, I think. Waste Management, it has a bigger presence, I believe, than our applicants. And Waste Connections actually has a pretty big presence in Portland as well. But they don't have any in Washington County.
Awesome. Any other questions? Which we go around the room for direction for staff on preparing a resolution?
I just have one more question. For Chris, what was the rate return? Again, for this last year, you mentioned?
It was, if we scroll back up.
It's on 5%.
Yeah. 28.
Yeah.
No,
Keep going.
Not the 10.
It was like, it was just under 5% for 2024.
As to determine the rate.
Yeah, so 2024 was one more.
There you go.
Right there.
Like 70.
Five.
This is the adjusted for 2024, 4.78. And then the projected for 2025 is just under 10%. It's like 9.1.
And because it was under the 8, this 4.7 is under the 8%, it triggered the rate review.
Yes,
You're saying that correct?
yes.
Okay.
Had we been in the 8 to 12%, which is in code, it would have triggered just a CPI index application.
I don't think we've ever hit that in my entire time in council.
I think we had a couple of years actually, but Chris was brought in and did rate review and projections, and based on that, a different methodology was applied.
Yeah.
And last year, when we raised it 10%, the goal was to have it be within that range for this year. Is that true or no?
Yes. Yeah, so if you go down a couple slides here.
I think we're tracking to be around the 10% mark, right?
Yes.
Which is great.
But then the future projections, which go into 2026,
Right there.
show us not more than 10%, so then he's.
One more up.
Shows. Oh, back.
or back.
There you go.
Okay, so the top.
So that's with the rates, new rates that went in effect January 1st.
Yes.
So these would be the numbers for next year's?
No, this is the current year that we're in right now.
For the report, we would turn it in March of 26, yes.
I mean, I know these are not the exact for this entire year, but this is what we would be then seeing for the
Yes.
next rate. Okay,
And if those reports came in like this, in those reports next year, then it would just be the CPI
right, okay.
calculation based on where it was.
I just wanted to note that this was not these returns for this year, it's the next cycle. Okay.
Here's what you need to do for city council. You need to tell Eric that when he fills out the report, he needs to hit 9.1%.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
That's the accountant's first question, what do you want the number to be, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Free. So it sounds,
From a regulatory or whatever standpoint, we as a city do not have any control of telling the hauler what vehicles to use, correct?
The recommendation maybe? The best.
Who's the brains in their haul? Who knows the answer? Can we tell you what kind of types of technology you can use in your trucks?
The franchise agreement does not, no.
So I just want to make that crystal clear that that was the answer that I'm assuming. I was just voicing my displeasure of us paying more because we've got a couple of them on the books.
and I think kind of where I was at is, as we move forward, we can't require you, but out of courtesy, we just have those conversations and be upfront about it. Not that you haven't been upfront. That was a
No,
wrong.
I-
Yeah.
I hear you all, and I respect what you're saying, and we will do that.
Right, if it's revenue neutral or marginal, like I wouldn't care. Do what you guys make the expert, but you know, it's a pretty significant cost, so it feels like. a
Or it even-
conversation should be had.
Yeah, Doug, or even if it reduced the maintenance costs, right, there should be.
Yeah, the whole works, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, well, we pay more, but we don't have to.
Well, there is, I mean, that's small relative to this, but there are maintenance improvement of about $200,000 across an 8 to 9 year period of benefits.
So maybe even just next year, if you show that, then we can feel better about paying more potentially, right?
But we're also one of how many cities that you're serving.
Right, so Sherwood is receiving a portion of it.
Yeah.
But what Chris has shared, the 40 cents is Sherwood's portion of the
Correct.
cost.
So,
But yes, you are not paying for the entire truck, you're paying for Sherwood's percentage of our business's portion of the truck.
Yeah.
But I guess what I was trying to say is that the decisions that you are making about what kind of trucks to use, were one of how many cities that are reflecting.
right.
Doug said.
All right, so it sounds like the consensus is to prepare a resolution for the proposed rate increases. And then on top of that, work toward a plan of getting an understanding from our community on the mixed organic waste and yard debris cans.
But did we all kind of agree with my
Nothing
point that we don't need to worry about trying to fast track that?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, but is there is there a reason we should delay it? I mean,
I don't think it's delay, it's more that we would need to rush if we were gonna try to do it at setting rates.
Or government, we don't do
I'm
anything.
just saying, yeah, if we get it out in, by the end of the year, even if it doesn't affect this rate, we'll have the data for next.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. We get it for this one.
That's exactly what we're saying.
Yeah, I understand, but I needed it to be clear that we're still gonna move quickly on it, but we're not gonna try to rush it. Yeah.
I mean, we need the data before this time next year, so.
All right,
Whatever
I'll trust the
staff-
staff judgment on.
all right,
Thanks.
is there anything, Renee, anything else?
No, I'm
Good, Keith, you good? Good, yeah. good.
I just have learned that I need to do better messaging for the yard debris.
There you go.
Kim, you're good?
I'm good.
And Taylor, you're good? All right.
Thanks, Chris.
Staff has direction, we are adjourned. Thank you for your executive session.
They got it in like